The Empire and the Peace Dividend. Recently, the new Secretary of Defense, one William Cohen, announced that not only is there no peace dividend now, there will never be one. I guess we're supposed to believe that there was actually a small peace dividend for a week or two because Cohen described the dividend as being over. The Secretary wants us to spend even more money on bombs and guns, really fancy ones, of course. There is no peace dividend because the fundamental dynamics of American society remain unchanged since the end of the Cold War. People like to pretend that we had to have this huge military rather than feeding, clothing, and educating our children because of the Soviet menace. Well, it turns out the real menace all along was the United States and its military conquest of the world. These days, we call this process of conquest capitalist imperialism. The U.S. is the mightiest empire that humanity has ever known, and our empire is so strong that most people just take it for granted. The truth is that the ruling class in the U.S. uses the military might of our armed forces to impose their profit-lusting will upon everyone. If anyone challenges our capitalist right to exploit every human being on the planet, our rich people will have those naive, independence-minded fools bombed into eternity. We know this to be true, but we like to pretend that the military is actually extending democracy around the world. The same truth holds for our Cold War history as well. There never was a Soviet threat, nor was there ever anything even remotely resembling a Soviet empire. The purpose of an empire is to extract wealth from the periphery and bring it to the center. In our case, the wealth of the Third World is forcibly extracted to make American capitalists even richer. As we know from the rhetoric about Cuba, the Soviet Union actually had a net outflow of wealth to its periphery. Cuba, for example, did not allow the Soviets to own anything in Cuba, and the Cubans benefited nonetheless from favorable trade terms that ultimately cost the Soviets money. In the American empire, we also provide aid to the periphery, but the profit extracted by the few is many times more than the aid paid for by the rest of us. Why do Americans think, then, that the Soviet Union was a threat? Nuclear weapons? It's true that the Soviet Union built and maintained weapons of mass destruction with the purpose of defending themselves from us. But we said the same thing. We were supposedly just protecting ourselves. The fact that the Soviet Union never even tried to develop a first strike capability, this according to the CIA itself, seems to go overlooked. The country that continually tried to develop newer and better first strike capabilities is us. Who is the aggressor? Thus, Secretary Cohen tells us we still need to spend even more money on even better weapons, and we must be prepared to fight two wars on different continents simultaneously. Why? This part he's a little vague on. He says something about drugs and terrorists, both problems created indirectly by our military domination of other people and directly by the CIA working with drug smugglers to fight illegal wars. Isn't that convenient? The Secretary says the world is unstable, but does not say that this is because of the U.S. government installing and maintaining dictators. U.S. corporations exploiting the wealth and resources of most of the Third World, not to mention the coordinated efforts of the CIA and Third World warlords smuggling cocaine and heroin. So, of course, we have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on very profitable weapons systems, which may or may not actually work, all of this to protect us from an enemy of our own creation. Although, to be fair, the Secretary also wants to continue the active suppression of the human and democratic rights of people all over the world. The lack of even a pretend threat from the Soviet Union or any other military power has not even made him blush. He just asks for more money. Worse yet, the one benefit that the military provided, incidentally, to ordinary people was a kind of military Keynesianism, which means using military spending to regulate the economy and employ people. These days, the Secretary of Defense wants to close military bases all over our country. He still needs the ones in Asia and Europe. So, not only is there no peace dividend, but the bloated military that remains will be one which provides significantly fewer jobs than before, and will cost even more money. Defense Secretary Cohen is either a complete idiot, or he thinks the rest of us are. This is Richard Curtis.